Hi everyone, this is Al McKay. Welcome to episode 69. I'm talking with Andre Cantarel, who is a CG Supervisor on lots of films like Whitehouse Down, Independence Day, Resurgence, and plenty more. We're talking about lots of cool stuff. Let's dive in.
Welcome to the Alan McKay Podcast. Alan is an Emmy Award-winning visual effects artist and mentor to many leading industry experts. Listen in as Alan talks with other industry leaders in film, video games, and visual effects about their experience, lessons, and methodology. Alan will teach you pivotal advice to fast-track your career, better your skills, and reach your ultimate dream job. Check out the latest episodes on alanmckay.com.
Hi everyone, so I'm going to keep this short. This is a brand new episode. I'm really excited about this. Andre I've known for a very long time. We met in New York, I think in 2007, around then at least. And we stayed in touch for a long time. He ended up working on 2012 at Uncharted Territory right after we worked together. And he kind of built a really good relationship with Uncharted and has worked on many of their projects since then, as well as working for a lot of other really cool studios, Pixamondo, you name it. And I always thought it'd be really fun to do an episode with him just to kind of talk a lot about the technical aspects of a lot of the productions he does. Typically, he works these days as a CG supervisor and essentially will quality control or quality check a lot of the work coming in from other facilities, making sure that there's continuity, really kind of setting the standard for a lot of the work that they do as well as what he does. So he's definitely got a lot of experience doing a lot of insane modeling. In fact, I'll make sure to leave some links in the show notes to his personal website so you can see some of the personal work that he does, which is just absolutely insane. Definitely the most attention to detail I've seen in a very long time. So he's an extremely talented artist when it comes to lighting, when it comes to photoreal, when it comes to modeling, doing a lot of stuff in general. It's been really amazing kind of seeing some of his work. Now, before I get started, I'm just going to mention that in case you haven't seen the videos I released recently, I've got more stuff coming. I've been pumping out nothing but content to my Inside Circle for quite a while, and the last couple of weeks have been really active. If you want to check it out, go to www.alanmckay.com/inside to sign up for free, and you'll get access to lots of content regularly. Typically, I send out about 2 emails a week, which for some people may be too much. If that's the case, then simply hit delete or just read them at another time. But everything I send out is typically all content related. So I'm sending out videos constantly. I'm sending out a lot of really vital information that can really help your career, a lot of PDF files, a lot of other really cool stuff. So if you want to sign up, simply go to alanmckay.com/inside. So ALLANMCKAY.com/inside. Now, at the time of recording this introduction, I'm actually about to go to the dentist in 30 minutes and get one of my wisdom teeth yanked out. So this is not going to be fun. I'm probably going to be a big, drooling, babbling mess. We'll see. But anyway, wish me luck. Okay, so let's dive into this interview with Andre Cantarel and enjoy. We'll just dive into this, but I don't know, do you want to give a quick intro as to who you are and what you do, or,
All right. Yeah. My name is Andre Cantarel, and I'm a visual effects artist. I'm a generalist, but recently on shows like Independence Day, Resurgence or so, I was CG model supervisor, among other things. I filled in the generalist role again, did shots from A to Z except compositing. Mm-hmm. But the focus point was still the CG model supervisor position.
Mm-hmm. Okay, cool. And I guess with this, we'll just dive right in and get into the guts of everything. But you work with Uncharted Territory quite a lot. So
yes.
Volker Engel and Mark Weigart, usually working with Roland Emmerich on a lot of his films. So
exactly.
That's a pretty interesting structure because it's one of the only studios that literally kind of spawns,
yes.
does a production, shuts back down, which yes. I like the idea of, just because there's no overhead. That's when most studios go broke, is because they're trying to survive between each production. But when you're specifically existing for project. It means that you ramp up when you need to, and the rest of the time it's chilling at the beach eating cake.
Yeah, pretty much. Yeah, and the
Based
great
on your
thing
Facebook
is
photos.
the great thing is you always have the latest hardware, because all the workstations, they get bought fresh, whatever state of the art is at that point, and so you're not having to deal with like an old machine with 16 gigabyte RAM
So
or
you're not
something.
dusting off the stuff that you worked on, I don't know, Independence Day 1 with or something.
Yeah, exactly. No,
So-
it's pretty great.
What happens with that? Like, what happens with the hardware? Do you guys just kind of like auction it all off at the
Yeah,
time?
usually it gets sold, and what's great is that the artists have the first pick.
Mhm.
So at one point, the accountant just sent out, okay, here's a big PDF with all the hardware and all the prices, and everybody's running to his office like, I want this one, I want this one.
I like that.
And luckily I was first, so I got the nicest ones,
Mhm.
which I'm using now at home.
That's cool. That's really cool. Because it's kind of sad, but whenever like studios shut down, it's the first thing that happens is like auction sites where everyone's like, all right, I'm gonna get Rhythm and Hue's like office chairs. I'm gonna do this.
Yeah.
Whereas like here, it's actually like, all right, just ramping down and getting rid of everything. So that's kind of cool. Like, did you guys ever think about doing cloud, like more rendering and everything in the cloud rather than going and buying a shitload of render technology every single time?
Yeah, I mean, we looked into this, but there's always a little bit of trouble with the schedule. You have to deliver while you were looking into this matter, and then in the end, we went with a local render farm, which is just better. You don't have all these long upload and download times and over the internet if you would render at Google or wherever. So I'm always a fan of the local render farm, but I'm sure in the future, once the pipeline is sorted out and there's no problem between Linux machines and Windows machines and so on, then this will definitely be the future. I'm pretty sure about that, because the render farm, having it local, is one of the biggest hardware costs, of course. You have to think about air conditioning, electricity, kind of building supply, and so on. So there's a whole rat tail of stuff around the render nodes that has to be taken in consideration.
Did you find on Independence Day that like you guys had an original shot count and then it ballooned up or shrank down over time?
Yeah, felt like almost on a daily basis. No, it wasn't that bad. No, there's always new shots that come in later. Things change a little bit here and there in the script. I saw that on every movie I worked on so far. Yeah.
And there's usually sequences that they're holding back kind of just to see how everyone's doing and who's kind of handling things well, that they're confident can tackle more.
Yeah.
Because I found that in Flight, which we did Atomic, and Atomic's well known for doing cloud rendering. So we went from like 85 shots to 300 shots like overnight. And rather than doing because I've seen that happen plenty of places, what usually happens is everyone then needs to go and buy a shitload more hardware, licenses, artists, and at the end of the day, like they run out of electricity and everything else that they didn't plan for. Whereas like rendering the cloud, it meant like, all right, we got more shots. This means like more process power online, and you just throw more money at that solution. So
yeah, that's the big advantage if you render in the cloud. Once the pipeline is there, then it's just the scalability is there.
I'm interested to see where it goes with more kind of like a PC or IP setup. So like PC over IP basically. So in other words, eventually you'll get to a point where you won't have the computers local either. It'll basically be you've got a screen, you've got a keyboard and mouse, and you have a little box next to your desk, and that's got a network cable.
It's like the old days where you had that room-sized computer and everybody just had a terminal.
Yeah, you got like a mainframe or a Cray.
Yeah.
So yeah, I'm interested in that because like I even did that a little bit again with Atomic because I'm based in LA, they're in San Fran, or now they're everywhere, Montreal as well. But what happened with them is that we like working together, and it's like, well, let's see how we can kind of keep working together. So I tested out all these different ways. Like on Transformers, is one shot got kicked back, and I'd gone back to LA. So they're like, how do you want to do it? Do you want to work local? And I'm like, you know what? Let's try working on your farm using remote desktop. I just want to see whether we can do it. So it was a little bit of lag, but I ended up working on the shot that way, and instantly I could tell that in that situation, it works really well to work locally to a point where you kind of get into revision mode. So in other words, as soon as, not revision, more like review mode. So I think working locally until you get to a point where it's time to send stuff out for review. At that point, when they're saying, okay, things are cool, just tweak this or change this, that's when you can start working on their network remotely. And have a little bit of lag, but for the most part, and these days I don't think the lag's there as much, but it's a way that you can be on their network and they can be dealing with your assets, and rather than it being like the worst situation I've seen is where you've got to upload files to FTP and then they implement it into their workflow.
Oh my god, yeah.
I did that in Superman where I was working remotely from home for a little bit, and there was like one situation where we're trying to get out stuff for the initial Comic-Con announcement, and there's like this one shot of Superman inside of his spaceship, and we want to have all this like intricate energy stuff moving through the crystal cracks, and I would be getting feedback from Chris Bond about my shot, and he was like 3 versions behind because someone fucked up and they'd be showing old versions from a week ago, and that actually caused issues because eventually Chris was getting pissed and he was like, Alan, like this isn't changed in a week, and that's when I'm like, you know what, hold on like an hour, I'm gonna figure out what the hell's going on. And finally I got to see what he's looking at. I'm like, dude, this is a week old, like you're looking at the wrong shit that people put in dailies for today.
Oh no.
And there's like all this kind of miscommunication that can happen.
It's good to have like something like Shotgun or whatever where you can tag stuff for the soup there.
Exactly. And this is back in 2006, and I was working from like a 2-bedroom home. Like I worked in like 4 different offices, but this is where I went back home for a while, and like it just became clear to me. It's like, this isn't going to work, because I borrowed 2 of their render nodes as well, the render blades, and it's kind of like just now I turned all my nodes off because like these blades were like really
it's like
loud.
a jet.
Yeah, and I had a friend from IBM, and he's like, I can fix those for you. I just need to drill a hole in the node, and it'll actually reroute the air, and it'll be really quiet. And I'm like, these aren't mine, so I don't think I can do that. But yeah, I mean, I've always been kind of fascinated with that kind of workflow of like, you know, where you could get the point where you can work from a laptop and have all the render power you need at your fingertips. And so I think we're finally getting to that point. Like ILM did their pod test a few years ago where they set up in LA for a while, unofficially, and worked on a bunch of productions, and worked really well, where all the workstations were all in San Francisco, but all they're doing is working remotely from computer, and it seemed to be pretty seamless. And I think Scanline's starting to do that a bit as well.
Yeah, I mean, if you're close to like a fiber glass connection thing, then it should be fine. I mean, the rate is so high.
Yeah, doing fiber optic, any kind of fast, connection. I mean, these days is pretty standard. I had a meeting this morning with a company in South Africa, and they're like, it's funny because I've got students in South Africa, and like now I know the ISP there really well. I think it's Telecom, just because they're so bad. So like again, I had to hang up a few times because I'm like, there's 10-second delay between each of us talking, and it's just like, I can't do this.
God.
Yeah. So it depends like regionally where you are in the world, but yeah, that's cool. So like, I guess we'll talk about Independence Day for a bit, just because obviously that's fresh, and but like I'd love to get into kind of specifics about that. But I mean, you as Uncharted typically are more kind of not necessarily on the client side, but you are essentially the head vendor that would distribute all the work to other vendors. Is that right? Or
we're basically the hub of the production, and we connect to all the vendors, the studio, and the directors also usually within the building. So we have always close access to him. And when everybody goes onto set, a smaller unit stays here in LA and prepares everything Roland needs on set, like NCAM system, the real-time set extension, which I did a lot based on the shooting schedule. Very, very interesting stuff.
So who would win in a fight, Michael Bay or Roland Emmerich?
Who would win? I think Roland, because he's just super fit.
Oh, yeah. I like that.
Yeah, he shoots for 18 hours straight and never gets tired.
That's crazy. Yeah.
I mean, maybe Michael Bay does that too. I don't know. I haven't worked with him yet.
He screams for 18 hours, maybe. So, yeah, I guess like, have you found it to be pretty effective? Like, rather than there being essentially the VFX soup and a VFX producer sitting around getting stuff from everyone, actually having someone on their side being able to kind of technically deal with everything and be able to communicate between all the facilities and kind of get that continuity as well as problem solving going. Because even 2012, I remember like Sam Korshid and a few of the guys were saying how they found it so effective being able to, like, let's say Double Negative is work on a sequence of shots and they're not quite up to like what the expectations were. They're able to kind of say, okay, well, let us figure out on our end what we need to do and kick it over to you and kind of help build that bridge of communication a bit better with like what they needed technically. So have you kind of found that to be pretty effective, having like a facility on directly working with everyone that is then talking with all the other facilities, which are obviously more independent.
Yeah, I had the feeling it just cuts down big time on the communication time. It doesn't take like a day or two until you get a response or so. It's just everything there is built for immediate feedback. Like we have a question and there's a good chance that within 15 minutes or 30 minutes I can get an answer from the director, or he steps by anyway, and then I can just show him stuff on the screen, and then this way we can also answer quickly questions from the vendors as well.
That's cool. Yeah, I finally saw Independence Day the other day. I don't remember it too well. I think I must have been like hungover and sleepy, but I mean, yeah, it was cool. I mean, it's definitely visually pretty amazing. Like, I guess the big gag is not seeing the White House get destroyed for once.
Yeah, I was surprised. Yeah, that's unfortunately the more I can say to that.
But so what facilities did you guys, like, what have you done personally with Emmerich so far? Because you did, obviously 2012 was...
Yeah, 2012 was my first movie with Uncharted and Roland. And then after that, we went to Berlin, work on Anonymous, which is it's a smaller budget movie, like, I don't know, 30 million maybe or so. And there we recreated 1600 London. And that was a real fun project to work on because it was such a small team. And me being a generalist, I could work on every aspect of the shot, which was great. And after that, we did Whitehouse Down, if I remember that right. Was also a lot of fun to work on, especially me, because I like the architecture of the White House, and I built one by myself at home because I'm not busy enough. Yeah, exactly, and I'm not busy with the other personal projects. And then after that was Independence Day Resurgence. And I mean, this just sounds like, okay, that's 4 or 5 movies or whatever, but all of these are very long. On Independence Day Resurgence, I was on there for 18 months. Whitehouse Down was 12 months. Anonymous was 11 months. And 2012 was 16 months. So,
right. Yeah. And IDR, I mean, that's kind of been in pre-production for a very long time because I remember, hearing a few people rumbling about it, like back in 2006, 2008, something like that. Like,
yeah, it has been on the desk for a while, and then they made changes on the changes and whatever you have to do to get it ready.
That's cool. So what were the challenges with
Anonymous? It's about Shakespeare and certain theories about who he was and so on. The challenge was, the size of the 3D team was really small. We ramped up a little bit later in the game, but it was smaller than you would expect. And
how many people?
In the beginning, we were just 2 3D people, and then later we were about 5 senior artists, and then a couple of junior artists, and that was it. And then the compositing team was a little bit bigger. Let it be 15 or something, and that was pretty much it. And the challenge was we basically recreated entire London. We started with a river, with the Thames, and then we filled in city block for city block based on old paintings. We built the whole London Bridge, which has like 200 houses on it. I built all of that. And the St. Paul's Cathedral and the other churches and the Rose and Globe Theatre, everything is there where it belonged based on an old city blueprint. And you could really take the camera and move it anywhere you want and you render it.
How do you approach something like that in the beginning? Like when you say, okay, time to literally rebuild a famous city in a different era?
Okay, we start out with a blueprint that is to scale in Max or wherever. And then while one person starts building low poly houses first, because we had to get something ready for previs pretty fast, but we also did it in a way that we can use those houses in the background of shots. So
are you also doing it based on like knowing what angles you're going to see based on like, okay, well, these houses are priority because they're going to be...
We knew a few key locations, but we also knew that there will be a handful of other locations, but we didn't know where they will be. When it's about the Tower of London, we know, okay, that's a hero asset. We put more effort into this, but we also knew we're going to see the surroundings, at least in mid-ground. And so we put quite some detail into those as well. And we had a handful of hero background houses, if you would want to call it that way. So we can always, let's say we go into a random road and put the camera down, then we can exchange those background houses with those hero houses and have a great start already.
Cool. That's awesome. And how much of it ended up being, matte painting and compared to CG?
The matte painting was really only the background of the background. When you look on YouTube or whatever, you can see there are some making offs online, and you can see that the 3D background goes all the way in the distance until the houses are only like 5 pixels big, and then the matte painting starts. It's really like one big thing.
Mm-hmm. Okay, cool. And I guess who were some of the senior staff that worked on that? Team-wise?
That was me, and then Robert Freitag worked on it, Irfan Selik, and
how's he doing? Last time I saw him was at the VES Awards. He came up, he's like, Alan, and I'm like, who are you? And he's like, Irfan. And I'm like, oh fuck, known him for 1,000 years.
Yeah, great guy. I mean, I don't know. He's super busy in Germany. I guess it's
Is he in Stuttgart?
Yeah, Stuttgart or Cologne or Munich. I don't know what he's doing right now, but he's always busy.
Right. Yeah, love that guy.
Knut Möde was there as well. He did great work on Red Tails at Pixelmondo in Berlin as well. And then we had a few junior artists who are now senior artists at Image Engine, I think. That's Martin Bohm and some other people. I'm bad with names, sorry.
No, it's all fine. So, VFX is like war. You end up meeting all the people along the way. So that's cool. And I guess Whitehouse Down, same deal. I mean, with that, you were, CG supervisor for more modeling, kind of QCing everything, or how did it work?
I was the model supervisor, and then I did also the quality control of the vendor main assets, which was, they have all the great modelers and they know how to do things. It's just more like making sure that the White House looks like the real White House, because I know it in detail with all the ornaments, so everything is in the right place. And then with the helicopters, obviously, is something I know something about. And so when one vendor built the Marine 3, which is the presidential helicopter, I just make sure everything is watertight and looks like the set mock-up they had in Montreal, I think it was shot, while blending into the real one. That obviously is always a little bit different from set build.
So just for anyone who doesn't know, Andre is obsessed with modeling helicopters. Or is it just one that you've been working on your entire life? No, brilliant at modeling, and that's one of the big things is you've got a collection of helicopters that you seem to spend late nights and.
Yeah, I'm just interested in everything that flies from early childhood, and just over the years, helicopters turned out to be the cool thing for me.
I guess we'll loop back to that because I actually wouldn't mind picking your brain about why you're obsessed with that, but we'll stay on topic.
Yeah, it was just I'm from Eppelheim, which is next to Heidelberg in Germany, and there's a US Air Force base. And then every day there are all these Black Hawks, and U is flying straight over our garden, and everybody's annoyed about it except me. I was looking at these cool things. And then what really was the turning point for me was Black Hawk Down, which is a movie I saw a million times, and I love the shots.
Particles got used in that for a little bit of smoke trail in the back. Kieran Helson over in London, he was at NPC, I think. And
yeah,
it's it was back then, when Max was still Max was used in film on something. It's there's a little spinny traily.
It's something, yeah.
But yeah.
So that is why I like that kind of stuff.
Mm-hmm. Do you have any? I guess now we're talking about did you have any model airplanes or helicopters and all that kind of thing growing up?
I modeled airplanes too. One of my first on-site jobs was modeling a Boeing 777 for a commercial where everything had to be detailed out in the wings because we are close to it when it lands and all the flaps come out. You see all the mechanics of the landing gear and so on. And so, that was a lot of fun as well.
That's cool. And I mean, for you growing up, I guess we're going all over the place here, but like with your career growing up, when did you kind of decide you want to get into 3D? Because I mean, was it one of those things where you kind of decided like, wow, I actually get to, do something I'm obsessed about? I was going to use passionate, but I'll say obsessed about as a career, getting paid to like make models and do all this kind of stuff. Like, how did you kind of fall into that?
I mean, that started even earlier. As a kid, I was always drawing. How was it called? Flipbooks.
Mm-hmm.
And I got tired of like drawing everything all over again, frame by frame. So I just looked into what else. How can I make moving pictures? That was the first idea. And then I stumbled upon like the first 3D software, which was like $48, and it was absolutely horrible.
What was the one you started with?
Highlight Professional. It was. I saw it like in a Pearl catalog, and my dad bought it. And
so was that for PC or?
Yeah, it was for PC, and like animation was a separate program, rendering was a separate, and
like lightweight modeling, like the modeler, and
it was absolutely horrible. But just the experience of moving like something from A to B without having to draw the in betweens was like just like, oh my god, and I got hooked.
Yep.
And this is where I trashed my plan of becoming a pilot.
So you want to be a pilot?
Oh yeah, absolutely. I flew a lot when I was a child in South France in gliders, because a relative of mine is a flight instructor there, and he builds planes. And then visual effects ruined it all.
I don't know if you know this, but Christina was actually going to join the Air Force.
Oh really?
Yeah, because her dad's in the DoD in Canada.
Nice.
Pretend DoD. And her mom's like a trainer for the military as well. So, but yeah, she was going to join the Air Force, but I forget.
It's funny, just like my girlfriend Catalina, she wanted to join too, but she's too small. Broke her heart. Yeah.
Well, she's too tall. I know. I think it's like I think to do with her eyes or something like that. But yeah, because she was going to be. I forget. She'll have to tell you. But yeah, it's kind of funny.
The funny part is back then I was like at an exhibition of the German Air Force, and I was wearing glasses, like just for a little bit, and they said like, nope, you cannot be a jet pilot. You can only be a helicopter pilot. And I was like, oh no.
I met a taxi driver one day, like a young guy in Australia, and he's like, yeah, this is my last day. I'm joining the Air Force tomorrow. And he's telling me like a lot of his friends were going through it, and I think originally he couldn't do it. He tried out, and something to do with his eyes. He couldn't originally do it, but then he just, for whatever reason, managed to get that fixed, and he was able to go in. I call me crazy, but I've actually been thinking about that recently, about maybe going for a pilot's license, as in like, more just kind of going through the motions of it, because I live next to Santa Monica Airport, and maybe same deal. I'm like getting my obsession on just by having planes fly over all the time, and that could be me up there right now. Yeah,
no, I'm just wondering, like LA airspace must be super busy. I was like, we're gonna shoot you down in 3, 2, 1.
Yeah, but because like I've been flying drones for a bit over a year now, and like that's kind of interesting because you end up learning. Like I'm maybe like the one person who, whenever I'm like fly anything like that, I'm like super nervous, like heart's racing because I'm just don't want to crash anything. And the first time I flew one was actually on the street, and for a second, because like the lens I was using was like an 18mm lens, it's so wide, but also doesn't really give you a sense of depth when it comes to like how close you are to like that tree or any of the ones out there. And so for a second it froze because I didn't realize like once you get out of line of sight, it
the connection goes up.
Yeah, and I'm like, oh fuck, I just crashed like a $3,500 drone.
Oh no!
But then it came back, and I'm like, okay, just return this thing, do not crash it. And
that was the Inspire when you say 3,500.
Yeah, that was the Inspire, and I've got the ZenMuse X5R for it, which it's like a raw 4K camera, so it's pretty good. But it's funny, I actually got asked to work on a DJI commercial the other day for like one of their new products. But I don't know, like I've never sent hate mail to anyone before except for DJI, because they make great products. Their cameras are okay, but they're now partnered up with a better company that does professional cameras. But their customer service is by far the worst I've ever experienced.
Oh, really?
Yeah. No. So I don't know, like I'm so invested in a lot of the products, yet like if I wasn't, I would probably look at other solutions. But I have like the DJI Ronin, which is like the Steadicam rig for. It can hold like a Red Dragon, pretty heavy cameras, nice. So it's pretty cool. I also have like the Osmo, which is more of a gimmick in a way, but it's like another Steadicam. It has 2-point stabilization, but you can get a third axis stabilization for it as well. But I don't know. Like I like and hate their stuff, but they make good products. Just you'd think that they'd be a bit better about like.
Yeah, I mean that stuff is also not cheap, right? So
Yeah, the Phantom is definitely it's more the high end toy one that a lot of people go for. But
I'm gonna start with that one with
yeah,
the 4. Yeah,
it's just
to see.
the 4 looks better. It's just in the past, it's kind of like there's been things like you can still when you're shooting, you can still see some of the leg.
Oh yeah, or the propellers when you look up or something.
Yeah, so there's a few kind of limitations there, but
yeah, that's the great thing with the Inspire. It folds the things up so it's not in the frame.
Yeah, I've even got like a carry case, like a backpack carry case, which is pretty cool for it.
Cool.
Because like when I first got it, I was going down the beach and shooting a lot of stuff. There's a lot of new FAA laws that have come in as well, especially with commercial shooting. But for instance, one of the big things is I think it's 5 miles now. It might be 3, I forget. But you can't shoot. I can't fly it within 5 miles, I think, of the airport, which is bullshit because like Santa Monica Pier, for instance, is only 1.5 miles away.
Yeah, I saw drones there all the time.
Yeah, exactly. So I'm actually going to be shooting some stuff down there pretty soon.
Mm-hmm.
I'm upgrading my Dragon to just finally all got announced yesterday with Red, but the Red Weapon Helium is coming out. So that's the 8K camera that
Nice.
Michael Bay is shooting Transformers 5 with. So
the cheap stuff.
Yeah, the cheap stuff. So that's just it. Like I'm going to be upgrading to that as my like kind of hero camera, my primary. And but that's the thing is I don't want to fly like a $50,000-$60,000 camera.
Yeah,
on like
you don't want to do that.
Matrix drone or something.
Yeah.
But yeah, I don't know. It's pretty amazing. Like the thing I like about that camera is the fact that you're shooting 8K. The sensor is fucking amazing. So the noise is so small. It actually is like proper film grain. It's like very unnoticeable.
Mm-hmm.
So depending on the OPLF that you have, like you can shoot nighttime shots with such great dynamic range that yeah, it's going to be pretty amazing. Just not having any kind of grain or any shit in your camera anymore. Sorry, I know that about cameras, but the other thing is like the new one, the sensor has actually got 2 more stops in the dynamic, like in the darks. So therefore, it's like way better for shooting nighttime stuff. So yeah,
that's cool. Yeah,
it's gonna be pretty cool. But yeah, I guess going all the way back, like if we want to talk a bit more about Whitehouse Down, I mean, when it comes to the technical stuff, like what do you typically look for when you're doing QC for models and that sort of thing? What do you look for?
For the most part, I mean, I start with like the resemblance. Does it resemble like the real world counterpart or the set build or the blend? What has to be done between those two? That's the first thing I do. And then just make sure that all the detail is in the right place and so on. And then I look obviously for mesh flow. Can everything be subdivided? Is the surface bumpy or not? And so on. Those are the key things. And then once in a while you stumble upon really weird things that people model everything out of one solid piece, even though the real thing is made out of 300 pieces or so. Might as well build it that way and don't run into the headache of weird mesh flow and bumpy surfaces and so on. But that is really rare.
They're just someone who just loves extruding and welding verts and
I don't know. It's like it's made out of one piece of chocolate or something. This is how it looks like. Everything is like flush to each other. It's like this is not how real stuff is built. It's like you have your base structure and then all these aluminum panels in terms of in case of a helicopter or aircraft, and then they get just mounted onto that frame. So might as well just build it that way.
Was it you? I think it was when I was on flight. We were talking about this, but like again, I don't know if this is true or not. You might be able to confirm. Like these days, a lot of commercial airplane wings are essentially one giant piece, but they seem to kind of build all the rivets and things on there to make it look a lot more complex, just for people to feel a bit more comfortable about it. But it's essentially just one giant piece of wing.
No, I mean like. A real piece of a real wing still consists out of like 60,000 parts or something.
Right.
You cannot just build it out of one. I mean, there are all these moving flaps, gears,
exactly,
air brakes, hydraulics, and all that stuff. The tanks.
Someone was telling me that on flight, and I was just like, I think that was the guy modeling the plane. I can't remember his name right now, but so I was just like, oh, okay, like sounds a bit weird, but that's kind of interesting if that is the case. But ever since then, I keep looking at wings whenever I'm looking out a window, and I'm like, I call bullshit because it's just. You can see.
Yeah, maybe he wanted to model the wing out of one piece.
Maybe you want a chocolate wing.
Yeah, exactly.
So with that, like, what was I going to say? Well, I guess like one thing is, let's say if you're modeling, with the White House, like, is there, when you're doing the blend between the live action and the CG model, is that where you've got the set? And obviously, so you're talking about like you shot like a set piece of the White House and you've got to extend it to the CG one, or what are you blending between?
That depends on. I mean, we had a great guy who was in charge of the set build, so he made sure that everything is to spec, like after the real blueprints. So when you build the CG White House after the real blueprints, it will fit, just fit into the set because the set was built after the same blueprints. Of course, there's still like an inch or two here and there that you have to adjust, but overall that was pretty much nailed down.
So yeah, usually when you're shooting, it's all set stuff. You're not legally allowed to go anywhere near the White House. Like obviously you're not going to shut down anything and try and shoot there, but I mean, even in terms of like grabbing reference, that sort of thing, like how do you guys usually go about doing that?
You can shoot photos from the distance.
I know you can't shoot with drones.
It's absolutely strict no-fly zone, and even if you make aerial shots like for your movie,
DC in general, you can't fly drones at all.
Yeah, and even with a helicopter with a camera crew, you cannot get that close, so you need a very long lens if you want to film the White House. It's pretty restricted, and the snipers on the roof always look at you.
I was like, should I say anything or not? But like, yeah, you're looking through your lens and noticing someone else is looking right back at you in their lens.
Yeah, they always have people up there, and they're ready to take you out if you.
It's pretty fascinating. Like I've watched a lot of documentaries on the White House, and yeah, it's just like, wow, it looks so friendly. This giant like war zone, like ready to pop in action.
Yeah, which is funny because just 80 years ago or so, you can just walk on the White House lawn and meet the president on his stroll and talk to him.
Wow. I was flying back to Australia one time. I was watching this like Aussie comedy show, but like the Prime Minister of Australia at the time, John Howard, like he's going for his morning jog around, and like it's just so different to when you watch American TV where you've got the Secret Service running with the president, and he would have like a bunch of his team running with him doing his thing, but they were kind of testing the security, like these people on the comedy show. I think it was Chase War and everything, or whatever it's called, and it's just hilarious because like I'm watching this thing, it's like everyone's asleep on the plane. I'm trying not to laugh out loud because initially they had the guy just like waving, saying, "Hey," trying to shake the Prime Minister's hand, and he's like, "Oh yeah," shakes his hand, keeps running. Then the next time they see him, he had like one of those big hose, like like Death would have, like a giant
or the sickle thing or whatever.
Yeah, I guess he's got different names for it, but yeah, basically like a giant blade or whatever on a stick, and they're holding that and like waving, like, "Hey, can I shake your hand?" And like he's like, "Yeah, absolutely." Comes over, shakes his hand while he's got this big weapon in his hand. Then the next time they did it, he had a chainsaw in his hand, revving really loud. He's like, "Hey, come over and shake his hand." And like that's when the security people ran over. I was like, "Get the hell out of here!" And like kind of mouthing off at him. And I was just like,
"It's amazing."
How far can you push it before like security actually is an issue?
I guess in the US you would be dead already.
That's just like I think Australia, no one really gives a shit. So, but so what are I guess like while we're talking about, I mean, it's one thing I'd love to know is like when you're looking at models. I mean, is there a set way? Like, let's say if you're working on dynamics, like I'm assuming you guys didn't need to do much destruction, or were you doing all of that?
Just partially, but that was all pre-scored stuff, and then it's always hidden in our case, hidden in motion blur and explosion on top. So
right, so you're not building specifically for like doing dynamics later on or anything like that.
Not in this case.
On projects where you are, like, what are some of the things that you might do differently with a regular model that you might do if you're, let's say, to have a 2012 or something like that, have something breaking apart and falling apart?
Yeah, the first thing I do is I sit down with an effects supervisor and just ask him how he wants to have things. And then, usually it's like no interpretation of walls and floors and all these things. So everything needs to have a volume. So it's not just a paper thin shell. So you can use volume breaker to get your fragments and so on. And where can we cheat? What has to be built the real way? Basically, with all the layers, let's say you have a close-up building that falls apart. You have your concrete, you have your drywalls inside. You might have isolation physically,
like pretty much how
just all the layers, but of course only when you're that close that it's important.
What would be the turnaround in modeling like something that detailed, excluding textures, to go through the process?
Usually buildings don't take long because it's always repeating structure. You do one floor, you stack it up 50 times, and you make a top floor section with all the antennas and so on. So that doesn't take long. again, here it also depends on, is it mid-ground, background, or hero asset. In a hero asset, you might model every little aluminum strut of the frames and the glass and the tiles on the floor. Again, we had everything on 2012, like especially where the car is driving through a collapsing building. Then, of course, all that interior with the hanging down ceiling, with the light fixtures and all that stuff needs to be in there.
That's cool. And I guess like, what tools do you typically use, let's say at Uncharted for IDR or other projects?
We were Max, V-Ray, and Mari, Nuke, Photoshop.
I use Photoshop? That's cool, bro.
Yeah, man, Photoshop. It's unbelievable.
I'd be surprised if anyone didn't have it. GIMP.
Yeah.
So, what other tools?
That's it for the most part. I mean, then there's all the plugins like Thinking Particles, Fume, and so on.
Is there any specific plugins or additional tools that you guys kind of rely on? Like, let's say if you use like Railclone or something.
No, not really. Actually, it was all pretty basic stuff. There was nothing out of the ordinary.
And management-wise, like you're using Shotgun and stuff like that. What about for reviewing everything?
Like CineSyncs. I actually don't know what system they used this time. Or if I forgot.
With Mari, what are you typically using that to texture all the buildings and do all that sort of stuff? Well, I guess it depends on what you're doing, but let's say landscapes, buildings, things like that.
Yeah, I mean, we used Mari for the hero assets like the human jet, the hybrid jet, and the alien fighter. This is what we used Mari on for the most part. Buildings, yeah, I don't know. It depends on. I mean, usually we take like these facade photos and model from the extrude it out from the photos and repair the stretching and UVs and so on. Yeah, you can use Mari for that as well, but for the most part, it was for the hero assets, for the vehicles.
Do you get a lot of texture reference like wherever you can, or you just typically start from scratch, or what's your process usually? And I know like you're more modeling, but like when you are doing that sort of work, supervising it,
because we had set builds. Marion Spade, supervisor, he took a lot of 3-stop photos of the set build so we can match it. So that would be our texture reference. And then, of course, like if you have to make it a little bit more dirty, you go to cgtextures.com or whatever we have in the library and you just dirty it up. Other than that, if it is something that's completely made up, like the alien spaceship in Independence Day, the original model was our reference from the first movie, which Volker Engel has a model in his office.
How big was it?
It was 60 centimeters in diameter, 50.
Right. I remember seeing it.
It was pretty cool. And then obviously that was the reference. The director liked the surface, the look of it, the shininess, and where it's dull and dirty and so on. And then that was driving the texturing.
That's cool. Have you used Substance much for doing anything?
Not at all, but I'm just gonna buy it this week and use it at home on my stuff.
I think we talked about that at lunch actually, because I was like, yeah, go check it out and then get back to me and let me know if.
Yeah, exactly. No, I'm using some Quixel stuff and it's great. I just want to try that one out as well and see how that goes. We'll see.
It's cool because
sure it's pretty good.
Yeah, I like the idea of just like for procedurally generating a lot of stuff like curvature maps, AO, and
exactly. It can save you a lot of time just from what I saw with Quixel so far, and then Substance Paint, of course.
Like with the live action course, like I want to do a lot of CG models and make them look photoreal, and like that's the one area that I hadn't really figured out the pipeline of how I want to go about it. And I thought Mari would be a good solution, but then you literally are going to be painting everything from scratch for it all. I mean, text reference is fine, but just in general, it's going to be a lot more work. Whereas this way, it's like, all right, you're going to get all the weathering and all the other blend maps that you need. And then from there, you can start pumping all the diffuse and everything else that you want in there.
It's a little bit more convenient,
Yeah. So, man, I'm having one of those days today. I'm completely brain farts. So I guess with Marion, like, what was his role on it? I mean, he was the other CG suit. Is that correct?
Yeah, exactly. And digital effects supervisor. And yeah, I mean, he was on set day and night, taking care of everything that needed to be done there, made sure everything got shot the right way.
That's cool.
And then a lot of vendor management as well, overseeing all of us guys. I mean, yeah, he was there 100 hours a week, every week.
That's cool. Yeah, I've known Marion forever. Like when I first met him was 2003, and I was living in Sherman Oaks, and I'd have to commute to Burbank, and I didn't have a car. So Marion lived in the same neighborhood, so he'd pick me up every morning. We'd drop his daughter to school, and then we'd go out there. So it was cool when I came in to meet up with you and Volker and everyone, and Marion was there. It was just like this big family reunion of people. It's like, hey, I know.
Yeah, it's great, and he just knows everything about everything because he has done 46 movies or so, and like he knows every piece of software. He knows everything on set about cameras, lenses, everything.
That's great.
It's just there's so much I can learn from him on every show. It's amazing.
I remember when I met him, he and Jason Crosby and a few other guys were doing going to math class at night because
programming and everything.
Yeah, because they wanted to learn more about that. Because he wanted to write his own shaders because we're getting heavily into mental ray at Digital Dimension at the time, and so we wanted to kind of build our own mental ray shaders and do all that kind of stuff. And then I know after that he ended up becoming more of a massive person for a long time.
He does massive. Of course, too. Yeah. I don't know how he does it. He never gets tired. He only needs 3 hours of sleep per night or something.
Man. Oh, I guess more power to you. I don't know. It's hard for me to do an hour of work at the moment. But I guess going back to texturing for a minute. So let's say on some movies, if you are doing a lot of destruction and that sort of thing, or not destruction, but anything where you're doing buildings that are being replaced, do you work, or would sometimes the buildings be projections, or would you just completely replace buildings whenever you're trying to destroy them and do all that? Or would it depend on just how close up you get to?
Yeah, it depends on how close up it is, what the camera is doing, and how the destruction is happening. Sometimes you can just project and the rest disappears in smoke or so. Or, I mean, having a full 3D building, fully textured, obviously is a little bit more convenient when it comes to directed changes or so. Okay, now we see it from this side as well.
To get,
Yeah, exactly. So you try to avoid too much upfront work just to cover your ass later. Yeah.
How many shots did you guys do on IDR, and what kind of shots were they particularly? Because I know there's a lot of interiors, for instance.
I think the overall shot count was around 530 or maybe something like that, plus minus. A lot of shots were in the big hangar. There we had a few bigger shots. Then sometimes there were a lot of easy shots that's just out of focus in the background, so you can, especially in dialogue scenes when they cut back and forth between two people, you can reuse a lot, so that was easier.
This is a lot on green screen for a lot of the shoots?
Yeah, exactly. I guess blue screen it was, yeah. And then we did stuff inside the mothership with this big columns and so on. It has a very distinct look. Director wanted to have it look pretty much like the first movie, which is just basically a little bit of diffuse light and fog. So there is not much you can do with contrast and lighting or so. So there was a little bit of a challenge, but in the end he liked it. So we did a lot of shots there as well. And then we did some stuff in Austin, which is destroyed after a big wave went over it. And then we have the aftermath. So there's a lot of destroyed residential area, buildings, destroyed cars, ships, shipwrecks, airplane wrecks, and all these things. It's just a big bunch of assets thrown into a destroyed city.
That's cool. And how big were the teams for that? Compared to you're starting out with 2 people on Anonymous to doing
how many people were we? I would say around 20, 25 maybe.
This is pretty tiny. And how's it mixed up? Because I know you would. Who's the animation soup? The South African
Conrad
guy?
Murray.
Conrad. Yeah. So because you had a couple of soups in there, you would. How is it broken up? How many people were, let's say, modeling assets and compared to lighting and finishing shots?
Let me see if I get that back together. We had maybe, including myself, maybe 5 modelers, and sometimes it was 3, sometimes it was 4. I think. Texturing artists, we had 2. We had 1 mud painter. And then a couple of lighting artists, let it be 4, 5, 6 maybe, including myself. and then they would also do shading, of course. And then compositors were, oh my god, maybe 8 or 10. I don't know.
I'm starting to see a bit of a consistency here. It's like, 300% more compositors compared to CG. But I mean, it makes sense.
Yeah, I mean, all these numbers, they fluctuated a lot depending on what we were doing.
Yeah, absolutely.
Which stage of the production.
Actually, I know there's a fair few guys who came from Blur at the time, which was funny because even the day I came in, I was just coming in for a chat, and when I was in the lobby, there was already one guy I knew from Blur was like, "Hey, Alan, what's up?" And then Jolt Poxos was also. I guess he came in like the next day or the same day, and I'd never met Jolt at the time, and he's like saw my name on the roster, and he's like, "Oh,
Yeah, it's a very small world.
Yeah. But yeah, even when I went upstairs, like there's, I don't know who the hell the guy was, but he's just like, "Welcome aboard," and like, let me get your desk. And I'm like, I don't have a job here. I'm just coming for a talk. And he's like, "Oh, okay, cool, man." And he's like, "Yeah, we'll get your desk in a minute." It's just like, easy. Can I talk to someone else, please? But yeah, that's cool. So I guess with that, like, what were some of the big challenges that you had on that project in terms of like, where do you think some of the bottlenecks were, or areas that were really kind of challenging to?
One big challenge was the scale of everything. Like, I mean, the mothership is 3,500 kilometers diameter or 4,500. It's huge.
Which in imperial, like American scale, it's about 10 inches, right?
Yeah, something like that. Yeah, and I mean, it's super huge. And with the concept art we had, then I mean, the concept artists did a fantastic job. Everything looked great, but then you have indication of where they fly into the mothership and this big opening in the hangar. But when you actually put everything into scale, then it turns out that it is like a dust particle flying through a hangar, right? It's like it's absolutely
even
so out of
shots you wouldn't have parallax or anything, would you?
Yeah, exactly. Everything looked like just a spherical background still, because even if you fly with 10,000 miles per hour, the background doesn't move. And then we had to change a lot and make it work for the individual shots. So that was a little bit of a back and forth, some R&D, and then how to make it work in Max, what are your base system units and so on, because at some point you run into a lot of inaccuracies when you move a little bit far off the origin and so on.
Yeah.
It took a while to figure that out, especially when you start rigging stuff. You cannot just up and down scale everything easily.
That's right.
And in the end, we just made it look good.
That's another good point. Is like, were you guys working? Oh, obviously you already answered this, but like to scale, or were you having to downsize things to like 100th or 1,000th to scale?
I forgot what we ended up with, but what was it? I mean, everything in the hangar is real world scale, if you want to call it that way. So 1 meter equals 1 meter, because the hangar was only a kilometer long or something like that.
That's right.
But everything inside the mothership and so on, that was 1 to 100 or something.
Okay, so you work 100th to scale, and
something like that. I don't know. I forgot it, but it was
right. What were the other facilities that were working on the project? You had obviously
Weather, Scanline, DD, Image Engine, Lux in Germany. I think Macrovision was on it a little bit, yes. And who else? I mean, it was a lot, actually.
What were the contributions from each one? Do you remember?
Weather did everything with the Alien Queen. Fantastic
great
job they did. And Sinistar was on board as well. They did a lot of the big battle over Area
Image
51.
Engine were doing...
Image Engine was doing
sequences, right?
They were doing like a lot of where the aliens were involved, the characters. That was amazing what they did. Inside the mothership on the floor, in the fields, and then the alien prison as well. And DD was doing the exterior space battle on the mothership where they fly up there. Scanline obviously did all the big wave stuff and destruction and various shots with the city destroyers. Lux did a lot of shots inside Washington D.C., the rebuilt Washington. I'm sure I'm forgetting a lot of vendors right now. I cannot recall everything.
Big project.
Yeah.
That's cool. Yeah, I was talking to a few buddies who are at DD at the moment, and they were working on... They went from Deadpool to X-Men to doing Independence Day, and then it's like Power Rangers. So it's just like, all right, like you go for something really big to like, all right, something that you're probably not going to put in the resume. I don't know. Maybe Power Rangers.
Maybe it's cool. Maybe they redo it in a way that it's not like just people in spandex suits or something.
I saw the trailer because I was reading an article, and I think the article said like the trailer's out and it's super serious, guys. So I was like, all right, now I'm curious, but yeah, I don't know. It doesn't really seem like my kind of movie, but we'll see.
Maybe it's good. Who knows?
Maybe it'll be the fourth chapter of The Godfather. Who knows how it's going to turn out? That's really cool. And like, I guess that's the big thing is you spent 530 days on Independence Day. So it was like you were in it from the beginning.
Yeah, I mean, there was still, before me, there was still like some art department working on early concepts and so on for a while to discover the style. And but yeah, when I started, we were the first artists on the show. Art department was still in full production for a while. So it's basically from the beginning of a movie to the end, like how it always is on those uncharted territory productions, which is great. Yeah, which I love.
And how did you feel like on the very last day of like spending, a good like 2 years on a production?
It feels kind of surreal because like some of the equipment was gone already, and there was just a handful of artists left, and I don't know. You don't understand that it's over. It takes you 2-3 weeks until you notice that it's really, really done and out of the door.
I've always felt like I guess it depends on the productions, but there's been so many productions where you finish, but it's not like, okay, we're done, everyone cheer and like walk out the door. It's more like go home and we'll call you. So in other words, you're kind of waiting, like, is it done? And it's like, you haven't heard anything. I guess it's done. And then it's like, well, it comes out in a few days. I guess it has to be done now. So I've only had a few productions where it's like Superman was one where I was intimately tied to it from the very beginning of pre-concept through shooting it all, everything. And even the very end, I remember like sitting by the phone like at 8 a.m. when we're delivering the hard drives to Warner Brothers. And, I could hear him calling on the phone and being like, basically it's like we had a window of 1 hour to get the videos and get all the final pieces over. And Warner Brothers was actively going around like just politely letting every studio, Rhythm Hughes, us, everyone, like, just remember, like, if you don't deliver by 8 a.m. on this day, then we'll sue you. And it's just like, all right, no pressure. So like, I'm one of the last people in the studio, like nervously like hearing the phone ring and being like, all right, like, I guess the courier hasn't, sent it yet. And finally the phone stops ringing and I'm like, okay, he's arrived at the office. Okay, good. And, but yeah, usually it's just kind of more like go home and wait for the call to see whether or not you've got pickups.
So for us, it was like, I mean, at that one Sunday, I turned my machine off. I pulled out the plugs and I took my computer home because I bought it. Yeah. And then I took my standing desk home and that was it. Like I turn the machine off, go home, stay at home.
That's cool. And like, I guess there's another thing too, is that, obviously we work crazy hours in this industry and like sitting all day just kind of like fucks with your spine. So, I mean, do you find a lot more people these days are starting to use like stand-up desks and stand up a lot more?
Yeah. I mean, the interesting thing was like before Independence Day, I never saw anyone on a stand-up desk, but on Independence Day, it felt like half of the people or a third had a stand-up desk. And this is also where I bought mine. The human scale thing is a little bit pricey, but it's really good. And then I started just standing and it helped my back a lot. I mean, on some days when you're tired, you still sit down and then you regret it. But there it helped a lot. That's
cool. And like, I'm just kind of curious, like what desk did you use when you're, using that in production?
I bought one from Human Scale.
Okay, it's actually called Human Scale?
Yeah,
okay.
It's a weird name. It's humanscale.com. So the desk is a little bit pricey. It was like $2,000 or so, but it's like a thing that never dies. It's like spring-loaded and it's very robust steel.
Yeah. It's either do you want to pay, $10,000 in hospital bills and not be able to work during that time, or prevent that and think ahead. Because like I was talking to my trainer at the moment about that, and because I'm actually going to get him on the podcast because I want to talk about like preventing yourself from like fucking your health up. Because I think a lot of people, they always put, and I've done that in the past as well, I put work ahead of health, and it's like, oh yeah, I'll attend to that later, I'll fix myself later, and you're in pain or you whatever's going on, and you're just like, yeah, I'll just get through his deadline first, and you put work ahead because you think, okay, if I like get through this deadline, then I can like worry about that shit. The thing is, as soon as your health gets to a certain point, then it just like dramatically goes to shit. And then you end up sick and you end up not being able to work. And then you end up losing all this money and all this kind of shit just because you're paying all these bills to fix yourself and you're not able to work. And like, it's just a snowball effect.
So yeah, to all you 22-year-olds out there, listen to Alan and myself, because at some point you're going to be mid-30 and then all of a sudden your back aches, all your shoulders are cramped up. And
it's on your 35th birthday. It's going to happen.
Exactly. It's right there. I told you. And then, so this is why I'm also like getting into shape now. And I'm really focusing on that because you only have one health.
Yeah, that's exactly it. Like, I went to the dentist the other day, and the dentist was like, because you got to fill out your form about like, what's wrong with you, and it's like,
what is like wrong with you?
Yeah, exactly. Like, what the hell is wrong with you? And I went through, it was like no to everything. I just drew a vertical line through everything except for lower back pain. Like, yes to that. And the doctor came in, he's just like, lower back pain. Like, you're a bit young for that. And the thing is, like, I was talking to my trainer about it. It's just like, no, like, this is actually. You go back 50 years, no one would have that issue because like you're standing all day working in a factory. These days, we all sit all day. Typically, we work on average 10, 11-hour days. This is the industry we're in. And if you're sitting the entire time doing that, you're just compacting your spine the whole time. Like when I first went to a chiropractor years ago, and he was like, "Oh, like you got to work on your posture and like fix your back up," because I was doing a lot of deadlifts and squats at the time. This is like the beginning of where my spine went to shit.
Okay.
And it ended up being I would go and I would work out at the gym. I would do a lot of deadlifts, do a lot of squats, and then I would go to the chiropractor like the very next day, and it would alternate like that. And just thinking that, okay, like I'm doing something bad in my spine, who cares? And like I remember the chiropractor, and I don't think chiropractor is always the best person to go to, but I remember him being like, "Oh, if you keep this up, you're going to need surgery on your spine." And I'm like, yeah, whatever, because for me, I couldn't connect the dots of like back surgery. That doesn't make sense. Like I need to just like pop a joint or whatever. And you don't realize like what's happening is your back is getting compressed and it ends up putting all this tension on the kind of gel around your back, and it can cause it to rip open, and the ooze, inside of it can like pull out, creating like a big bubble in your spine. Like all this shit isn't like rare. It's actually, I know so many people now, like our age, who, between 28 to 35 that have back issues, and it's not like, oh, I've got a bit of an aching back. It's like literally when it happens, you suddenly get like sciatic pain that goes down your whole leg. The biggest nerve in your body is usually getting activated, and it's your sciatic nerve, which is like 6 inches or whatever, like a big nerve in your body that just suddenly gets turned on and doesn't turn off. So it's like having a hot iron just pushed against your back the whole time.
Yeah.
And this is the thing that, like, at least for me, it didn't make sense to me. I'm like, oh yeah, back pain, whatever. But then it's like, wait, like this, you can't work, you can't function, you can't do shit. And you do need to go get surgeries, or you need to get like a 12-inch like epidermal injection in your spine to just reduce the swelling down.
All the fun stuff,
Yeah. And I've done that where I've had deadlines where I need to get a cortisone injection in my spine, and I don't have time to like be put out. So I'm just like, okay, take me into the thing, give me a local, and just fucking inject me, and I'll be awake for it. And I've done that just because I need to be back, like, at least on the phone, taking care of shit later that day. So I can't afford to be put under for 12 hours and be groggy the rest of the day. So like twice I've done that, where it's just like,
wow.
And even there in the operating room, they're not used to that. They're like, we're not used to like people being awake, and like you just see people like playing music and dancing around. They're like nudging you, like, "Hey, Alan, like, what song do you want?" And I'm like, I'm trying to keep still so that way I don't get paralyzed when you like tweak my bone or whatever, the big syringe stuck in it. So yeah, I think these days like a lot more people are starting to think about, okay, well, have I stand up at work, or at least like half the day, kind of alternate back and forth, like just simple things that can drastically improve your health. So
Yeah, also like the same thing with nutrition. Like we eat all the crap and like all the energy drinks, all the sugar and stuff, and then thank God it's not me, but other people ran into diabetes and all these horrible things, and then now they're screwed forever.
The most common thing that places have is like, oh, we have all the free candy and chips and
stay away from that.
Stay
away from that.
And typically dinners, like one of my friends, like he's in really great shape, and he's very obsessed with like being in great shape, and I think he called it like the OT weight gain or whatever, which is like the overtime, like during a crunch, Because what typically happens is, like, I did this on God of War, a few other projects where I'd be buying my team steaks and sushi and all this stuff, and I realized, like, for 5 people, you would have like a $300 bill. So I kind of understand why a lot of studios do it, but usually it's Indian pizza or pasta that would just be on rotation. So you just end up eating nothing but these carb-heavy foods all day long, and drinking soda and all this kind of shit. So you'd end up putting on all this weight and then needing to lose that weight after you finish production.
Yeah, exactly.
So I don't know. It's just, the whole thing is just little tweaks you can do that just drastically, like for me, even just getting more energy. Like I was probably 20, 21, like I stopped drinking soda and started drinking water instead. And
I did that too.
Yeah, and like suddenly I got way more energy because you don't have that sugar crash.
I drink maybe 1 soda a month or something, and that's it.
I used to, my rule was always just, unless there's rum in it, then I won't. But now I don't, I think I drink nicer stuff that I would never put Coke in. But yeah, I just think it's just such a little tweaks that can just drastically affect things. And if you don't do them, then all that time that you think you're saving just by neglecting your health and other things, just they catch up with you.
Yeah, and the tricky thing is, it's a build-up that takes years and years, and so it takes years and years to undo it. So
what do you do with your spare time? Because now you've got a bit of time off, and you're
I'm relaxing a little bit,
posting pictures of the beach on Facebook. I keep wanting to be like, oh, I'll come join you, but one of these days, maybe next week, I'll come.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, it's I worked a lot on these 18 months, so I need a little bit of downtime, seeing friends I haven't seen before a very long time, working on my personal projects. I want to go a little bit more into flying drones and area shoot, and for the most part, personal fitness. Because as we just talked about it, 35 and you realize some things don't work that well anymore, like your back. So just want to make sure I'm good there.
So you've been doing the P90X?
Oh yeah, started 2 weeks ago, and it's destroying you, especially when you start with a P90X and you were sitting for 18 months or standing. Still not a workout. So it's really, really tough, and but this time I just stick with it and chew through.
Because when we're back in New York, Dennis Millions, he used to do P90X all the time, and he'd always swear by it, and like he's ripped as hell. And, this is his go-to thing. I've only done it like a couple times. Like when I was in Vancouver, there's a bunch of us that used to go and do it every lunchtime, and that's the closest I've ever gone to like wanting to puke was doing that. Yeah,
it's really tough, and it's only an hour, but it's an hour of constant moving.
Yeah,
and if you didn't move at all before, like the visual effects people do, it's devastating. So I had to pause it many times and then continue.
Like it's kind of like running. Like I never learned to run, as in like do like long, endurance running. So like when I first started like wanting to run when I was like 19. That was my whole goal, was basically like I would walk probably 5 kilometers. That's probably more than that. Maybe it was more like 6 or 7 kilometers, or no, sorry. Now I'm thinking kilometers. So like probably about 10 kilometers. I'd walk like a pretty long thing around this big mountain. This is after I came back to Australia, and my whole goal was initially I would start running at the beginning until I was like puffed out, and I'd stop, and then at the very end, and then bit by bit it'll be like, okay, in the middle. And then after a while, it's like, okay, I'll run, and then I'll take a 10-minute break or 5-minute break and run again, like bit by bit. For me, it was just interesting because like I just didn't understand. Like I'd never really had anyone kind of showing me how to like do endurance running, and for me, it was just kind of like building up the in between. So eventually, you could run the entire thing without much effort, rather than it being like in the beginning, it's like, okay, I just run at the beginning and I'll walk to rest, and like bit by bit, you're bridging the gap. And
exactly.
So the P90X, you might be like, okay, instead of 60-second break, I'll do a 30-second break, and eventually be 10-second break or whatever. And
I feel already the difference. Like now it's already much, much better than 2 weeks ago when I started.
That's cool. So what made you want to get into it? It's just like, I've got some time off. And
I bought it like 5 years ago.
Your belly is so big, you can't even see your feet anymore.
Exactly. No, I bought it 5 years ago, and I started it a little bit, but then there's always the job that ends it somehow. And then
so it's kind of like a book that you picked up a few years ago. And
exactly. And just with my back problems on this show, then I finally decided, so okay, this time I just stick with it. Now I have the time. Now I do it.
That's cool. With my whole back thing, I stopped working out when my health went to shit, when my spine went to crap, and I couldn't run anymore. And even now, like running isn't the healthiest thing because I'm just like constantly hammering my spine, and it's not good. And it's only been the last 4 weeks now that I started doing weights again and getting into that, which I for the longest time I just didn't want to do because I didn't want to be putting any pressure at all on my spine. And but it's awesome. Like it's such a huge health shift after not like I'd go and I'd do probably 3 miles a day, just walking on the treadmill because I didn't want to run, and that was about the most exercise I've been getting for the last couple of years. And now just getting back into weights is just like fuck yeah, like your body misses it. It's just like you
have to move. Exactly.
So I think it's good. I think it's definitely a good counterpart to like sitting all day and doing nothing. It's just like, all right, well now go and do something. So no, it's just sweet. And I guess for you, like you're also working on some side stuff at the moment. Is there anything you want to talk about, or can I leave that for another conversation?
I work on my personal 3D models, again, helicopters, of course, and making this super detailed Russian helicopter, which is like 65% done. It will be done at some point, and then
you were literally building to the point where we could probably 3D print this thing and fly.
Yeah,
so it's like fucking detailed.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I mean, those Russians built super crazy cockpits with like 1 million pieces in there. It's not like today where everything is high tech and touchscreen or so. It's really like you take 1 million. Yeah, you take 1 million parts and you just cram it into a very tiny space, and so. I'm going to turn this into a course I'm planning for a while. It's basically like high-end 3D asset creation from A to Z, like how to pick the topic, do the research, set your max up so you work in the right scale, and setting up the blueprints, and then show all the different modeling techniques to get it right from the start. And then, of course, texturing, shading, lighting, putting it into scene.
Right. And like, how long have you been doing CG? I mean, this is something we could have started the conversation off with, but...
Oh, yeah. Must have started when I was 15 or so. So now I'm 35. That's what I didn't study math 20 years.
20.
20.
Cool. So 20 years. Yeah. And like, I guess at this point, I mean, you've done a lot. You've done effects, you've done lighting, you've done a lot of heavy duty modeling. Is there any areas that you haven't really touched on or want to get more
Character
into?
modeling. I really, really want to get that.
Yeah.
Sorted out, photorealistic humans, which of course is a very, very high bar. Barely anybody can do it.
Yeah.
But at some point, I need 2 pilots for my helicopter, and that is the whole.
That'd be a good excuse.
Yeah, exactly. That's a whole different chapter, and there's a lot for me to learn because so far I only did hard surface, and just to mix it up a little bit and learn something new, I definitely want to go into that. And now, obviously, with ZBrush, that's a big help, and
that's cool.
It's a lot to learn.
I got Dan Rorty on here who's done like a lot of really amazing organic modeling, and he's worked with Paul Dvevic, who I want to get Paul on here actually, but yeah, basically he's done some fucking amazing characters, and now he's just in his spare time just pumping out so many, and like he's part of the Gear of War team for Microsoft, so I had all those guys on here, which was kind of fun. We actually sat here and did a session, so. Yeah, it's kind of talking with those guys is really interesting, kind of seeing like the challenges that come with not just modeling a character, but really getting to a point where you feel real, it feels like that's a real human being, and
like the last percentage points takes the longest time.
Yeah, like you look at Davy Jones, again, it's fucking amazing looking at that. And even when the first time I saw it, I was looking at that on the big screen, and I was just like, all right, I see how they did this. They, basically shot with a real actor and then replaced all CG but kept the eyes. Like, to me, that's what I was thinking, because I'm just like, it's so fucking real. But and it's like, no, completely CG. And it's just like, fuck. Like,
it's amazing. Yeah. That's definitely something I'm gonna look into. A lot to learn. Which is great. Yeah.
Well, let's wrap it up, man. But thanks again for coming on.
Thanks for having me.
Let's get some beer down the beach and eat some cake. And
cake on the beach. Exactly. That's what I do.
Awesome, man. Well, thanks again.
Cool. Thanks for having me.
So I hope you enjoyed that. I'll be back next week with some more really awesome episodes. I want to thank Andre again for doing this. It was a lot of fun, and hopefully I'll get him back very soon for more stuff. I'd love to do a live webinar with him and just kind of maybe do a Q&A, get some feedback from you guys in terms of, questions you might have in terms of making photoreal models or lighting, doing realistic environments, or in general, just industry related questions you might have. So again, let me know if that's something you'd be interested in, because I'd love to be able to throw that in his face and say, hey, everyone wants this, come back, let's do something. So if that's the case, just go to the show notes, which is www.alanmckay.com/69. And that will be the episode show notes, which will have all the links to things we've talked about in this episode, as well as a chance to leave comments, that sort of thing. And if you want to sign up for the Inside Circle, that's on there as well. But more importantly, leave a comment in there and let me know to get Andre back, or any of the people on the podcast that I bring on, if you want to do a follow-up, or if you want to do a live Q&A or something like that. Finally, if you do like this podcast, and I hope you do, then go to iTunes and just do a search for this podcast and leave a review. It would mean the world to me if I can get any additional reviews, that sort of thing. Obviously, it helps with rankings and just means a lot in general. Obviously, I put out these podcasts for free, not making any money from them or anything like that. In fact, I'm pouring money into them, buying mic gear and other things like that to make this all happen, travel around, all that kind of stuff. So that being said, if you can take 5 minutes and quickly just jump on iTunes, leave a review for this podcast, it would mean the world to me, and I will gladly buy you a beer and say thank you whenever I next bump into all of you or any of you. Okay, so I'll leave it there. Thank you again for listening. I'll be back next week with a brand new episode. Rock on.